Hey everyone, it's Matthew Sanford again. I'm from Mind Body Solutions. I'm a yoga teacher, trauma survivor, and I get around in a wheelchair. I teach. I'll fix that here. So I want to go back and jump right into it. Last week though, there was a comment from someone right at the end that as they were doing some of the mind body practices, they had this feeling of awareness going up, and it sounded like from the comment it was a little bit unnerving. And so I want you to know that if you're doing something and something like that happens, one of the things is to try to be more aware of your feet, like even wiggle your toes, get the awareness to be in the body down low. But otherwise, just you can change the pattern, get up, step off. You get to control the pace of what's happening. You get to listen to the instructions, however they work for you. And so that's part of what you always need to know is that when it comes to mind body awareness, and especially the healing of trauma, you're in charge of the pace of your own path, always. All right, so the idea behind this is the second week in what will be a 7-week course, right? That the idea behind what I'm trying to get across here is trying to get to use inward the development of inner awareness that's coming from body to mind, not just from mind to body, but awareness and practices that are creating sensations that are traveling in the other direction as a way to help deal with some of the things that happen to the mind-body relationship when you're a trauma survivor or helping people with trauma. So I want to quickly back up and do quick little reviews of the things we've covered last week and actually the week before too. So just the difference in sensations between empty and full, right? And the truth is both of them matter. Your sense of embodying and your sense of not being as fully out there to the outer edges. So as an obvious example, take an inhalation, feel the expansion, right? And then exhale and watch the difference, right? I want to also start to help people facilitate the difference between empty and full, but also connected and disconnected. And again, when you drop your posture a little bit, right? Drop your shoulders, you're less connected from the rest of the room. This has to do with how your spine is. Now just lift your chest, open up a little bit, be more aware of the space around you, right? Connection, disconnection is also a sensation. It's not a fact that happens just to you, right? It's like something that you get to control. And that's a really important thing. Other things we tried to we did a little bit of things of changing gravity. So if you lean back and then come forward, right? When you change gravity, lean over to the right and then to the left, literally, obviously the sensation is changing in your body. So getting used to change within your body, it's a good thing for all of us to practice, even if you're not a survivor of trauma. It's like, pay attention to what's happening to your body. But the other thing I want to add this time is, so kind of scoot back in your chair, you're kind of slouching back. I'm slouching back in my chair and letting my legs go kind of wide a little bit, right? Feel what that feels like. When you're out of alignment, when your femur bones are turned outward and the knees are spread. Now sit up straight again. Feel your sitting bones. Have your feet right below your knees. Press gently down through your inner heels. This is how I was defining mind-body connection last week, is that there's a change, that the alignment of your legs, and now let your knees splay out again. And feel the change in your spine. Again, what you want to drop people's attention to and to in yourself is that you're in control of inward experiences, that your body plays an integral role in those experiences. So now bring your knees back together, sit up straight and tall, feel the sensation of fullness. Now drop your chest, let your knees roll out, less connected, right? That these sensations are in your control in every moment of every day. Again, up and tall. So what I want to get across is we're trying to show different ways that there are experiences that you can practice when you're alone, when you're in whatever spot you want. Like, so, when I'm waiting in line, I do stuff like this. I'd be empty and full. I'm, constantly doing this. So now if you're comfortable for what I want to do today, I would like you to if you could grab like a book, or if you have a yoga block, that'd be great, but a hardcover book, right? If you were a dictionary, that'd be better than just a thin book. And if you're comfortable doing it, I'd like you to take off your shoes. And if I'm living in the best of all possible worlds, you'd be willing to take off your socks. Don't forget, one of your best sensing organ is your skin, right? And so part of the idea here is to get as much input coming into the brain. Okay, so what I want to introduce today, more overtly, and all the things we've already did are starts to that, is the sensation of grounding as a sensation itself, right? So last week too, we focused on exhalation. So like the letting go that happens on exhalation. So at the bottom of your next exhalation, that's a form of grounding, right? The inhalation, filling up the vessel, at the top of the inhalation, that's a form of grounding. And then letting it go again. So there's constantly these exchanges. But what I want to introduce today is a deeper refinement of the sensation of grounding, right? So if you bring your hands together like this, right? I didn't say yoga pose, whatever, namaste, but if I squeeze too hard together, really hard, although I feel more force there, I'm not grounded, not the way I could be. I might feel strong, but if I make this more supple, if I don't push, if I let my hands, instead of pushing against each other, if I let them be attracted to each other, as if my palms are wanting to touch each other, lift the chest, feel equal from side to side, this is a form of grounding. Right now, that sensation of grounding can distribute through your whole body as relief. In general, grounding creates a sense of relief that can move through the whole body, right? But then there's passive grounding, and then there's more active grounding. So drop your hands. So if you want to, I'm going to back up here. I'm going to put my hands against my knees, right? And just put my hands there and let them rest gently there and feel and allow the change in sensation. That's a form of grounding. Last time we were together, I had you put your hand on the forehead. So take your hand on your forehead, close your eyes, let the fingers rest on top of it, and then let the heel of the hand go slightly towards the bridge of the nose. This would be a form of grounding, of quiet grounding, right? What I'm calling passive grounding. And the truth is, take your hand off your forehead, the truth is you want to have a whole repertoire of grounding tools, right? So if any of you are lucky enough to have sandbags at home, which is a yoga prop that a lot of people don't have, oh my God, they're magic. It's like a weighted blanket. If you have a weighted blanket at home and you put it over your lap and you get boundary and weight, what I want you to recognize when you have those experiences is that you not only feel grounded this way, but a sense of lightness starts to fill the vessel. So grounded, passive grounding is actually something you want to get better at because it creates a sense of lightness, right? So this idea of letting there be passive ways. I had one doctor that used to go between patients that I used to help, and he'd always go in between patients, between rooms, and before he walked in the room, he put his hand on his chest. He just did this naturally, but it's a form of grounding. He was creating and being aware of the space between where he ended and the space was open to settle himself down, to know what was his and what was going to be the patient's. If you look through the course of your day, you're going to see little wisdoms like that in your own practice already. But now I want to go to more active grounding. So those of you that can, stand up. And this is where I'm hoping your shoes are off, and maybe even your socks, right? So standing on your feet flat, right? I want you to balance on the four corners of your feet. So what does that even mean? Well, be aware of the four corners of your feet, right? I'm doing it on my hand because I can't stand up. That already makes you start to go inward. What you're trying to figure out is how to empower inward awareness, right? So you get balance on the four corners of your feet. And then you try to lift up through the core, right? So you're always trying to take the inward awareness when you're doing an asana, when you're doing a yoga pose, and make it express outwardly, right? And then release. Now take the block or the book or whatever you have and put it between your ankles. Let it rest on the floor, but put it between your ankles. So you've got this prop, right, that I want you to feel. And now I want you to have your ankles squeeze the book or the block or whatever you have this way. And notice that without you even having to think about it, your chest lifted and you got a sense of taller. Now don't squeeze the block. Let your legs be less engaged and feel how the heaviness returns. Right? So you're constantly watching between these interplay. Now squeeze the block or the book again, follow the lift up through the chest, feel the outer edges of the body, and take a breath. Fill the vessel then at another level and let it exhale. But when you exhale, hit down through your heels and extend up to the top of your head. And then release. Don't squeeze the block. And notice how the sensation of gravity changes, right? So all we're doing here is by having you squeeze the block, not unlike having your hands together in this pose, right? You're squeezing the block, the muscles of the thighs are moving towards the bone. And because that's happening, awareness is going up and down the core channel, right? So watch what squeezing the block does again, and watch the expansion you feel from inside to out. This expansion, this action is a form of grounding. Whenever you have your muscle go towards the bone in your poses, in yoga poses, you're getting a form of grounding. And then let the legs go, right? And don't squeeze the block. Now I want you to do something wrong, right? I want you to squeeze the block, but kind of like when I had you push your hands together too hard, squeeze it too hard, right? So you start squeezing too hard, and notice when you squeeze too hard, not only does it not feel good, but you're less connected to the room, right? Your awareness has changed. It's focused. It's like got this over grip, and then release. But if you if you don't squeeze the block, you've lost something too. That in every action, and especially in a yoga pose, there's a sweet spot of action, like a range of action. So now I want you to start to squeeze the block. Don't end up squeezing it too hard because you know that has diminishing returns. Find the sweet spot of action, the balance between action and allowing that you're in charge of. So we're talking about an active form of grounding that actually allows for not going too hard because you don't want to close down the emptiness too fast. And then release. What you're going to find in yoga poses, and why it's a good modality to learn some of this stuff, is that if you overwork, you'll become ungrounded. If you underwork, you're more likely to be in a more slightly ordinary dissociative state, right? And so there's always this sweet spot that actually is going to optimize your breath too. Because when you squeeze too hard, you're not going to breathe as well. If you don't squeeze at all, it doesn't fill the vessel. So now I'm going to add another variable, right? It turns out that when you can differentiate different parts of your body, right? When you just squeeze in one direction, it's got a greater opportunity for violence. When in a yoga pose, if you just move in one direction, it's got a greater potential for violence. So with this time, when you squeeze the block, I want you to lengthen down. This is why I didn't want your shoes on. I want you to lengthen down the inner inseam of your foot, right? So you're squeezing and lengthening down. So your brain is having to engage more intelligently with a forceful action. You get to control your force too. So you squeeze the block, lengthen down the inseam, and notice how that more gently lifts your chest. That in fact, differentiating and teaching someone to differentiate different parts of their body is actually going to allow them to balance emptiness and fullness better, right? Which is critical for someone that's like working through trauma. And then release and take the block or the book out. Now, another way to more actively ground is to stand with your feet on the floor and then lift your toes up. Just lift your toes up and you'll feel a rise, right? All of your arches are lifting then. And that is a form of strength. So when someone's bugging you in your day and they're saying something to you that you don't really want to hear, lift your toes, expand from inside out, which will be another week, right? And feel full rather than empty when something on the outside is getting into you in a way that's like dysregulating you, right? And then release. And then have a seat back down in your chair. And so now I want to mix and match a little bit from last week. So last week we were talking about softening the organs of perception, right? And there was talk about learning to allow your emptiness, ground it with a little bit of structure, but then put strength under the emptiness, right? Now, this is part of what happens when the mind tries to be the protector, the only protector, right? It actually gets really vigilant and hardens, right? And your healing will depend on you being able to be vigilant as you need to, right? But then softer in other places. So I want you to, one really good grounding practice is your brain has a whole bunch of like receptors in your thumb and your big toe mounds. So put your hands down on your table and your feet down right underneath your knees. So grounding hands and feet, right? Simultaneously, opening the skin on the palm, opening the sole of the foot, feeling the sitting bones. And that when you start doing this, there's a natural rise of the chest, a filling of the vessel, which you know, we're going to talk more about this in other weeks. But now I want you to do that, lift your chest, ground your hands and feet, and I want you to soften the inside of your mouth. And I want you to soften the skin on the forehead. So you're practicing strength and release, and you're taking a breath that fills the vessel and the emptiness, and an exhale that does both. So you're going back and forth in this fullness and emptiness at the same time. That's what true resilience is. True resilience is being able to be both and stay grounded. All right, so I'm going to look for some questions and then release. So that's what I want you to get is when you get better at recognizing the sensation of grounding, you start to like realize that you've got practices in your life that are consistently practicing this sensation, right? So for example, if any of you have a pet, a cat on your lap, petting your dog, right? Reading the paper in the morning, sitting at a table, like having a cup of coffee, a cup of tea where it's quiet, you're in the room and you're not in a rush. Doing the little things you do to prepare, like if I go to bed without brushing my teeth, I kind of bum out. Like routines are actually grounding practices, right? You just don't want to take them too far. Like I used to work with a vet that used to have to walk the perimeter of his yard to feel safe to be able to sleep. He was thinking about keeping perpetrators out. I helped him realize that it was a form of grounding that he was practicing. And so instead of thinking about it in terms of other people, I wanted him to know that no, that action creates a different level of sensation in your body because it makes your mind feel safe, right? So again, look during this next week before we're back together next time, look for all the little places of grounding that you're already experiencing, and take a breath or two, do a couple of these extra things to actually enhance the grounding. And the grounding practice, I ground every time I wash my hands, right? There are places where I'm recognizing that I need to take in relief in a quiet way in the middle of my busy day. And that's how the body can help. I'll look in the chat to see if there's any questions here. What do you do with clients who feel safer to keep their spines rounded and slumped over? Good question. First of all, always let them do what they want to do, right? Always. Except start to go, hey, you might want to try this. And if you do it, and like if you sit down and go, hey, I got to ground for a second, but I got to lift my chest, or put your hand on your chest and lift into it. Like there are ways to get them to realize. So like I live with a disability, and for a guy that's been, I'm interested since I was 13, any change in my body, I've been trained to think is a bad change, right? Because the way the medical model works and all the things that can go wrong in my body, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of times trauma survivors are the same, like they already got their own thing that they know is safe. And what you have to do is introduce the sensations slowly, right? So you might start by just having them, instead of worrying about their lifted chest, you might have them try bringing their hands together and slightly lifting their chest. You just titrate the doses, and they will get over time that this actually feels better, or at least different, and it can be practiced in places that are safe. They get to do this when no one's looking at home. They get to do, and actually have them start grounding practices rather than lifting their chest, because this is kind of direct. Noticing their shower more, noticing the water as it hits their hands when they wash their hands, when they're doing dishes. Have them start to notice sensations that are grounding. And then say, when you're feeling the warm water run over your hands, try lifting your chest. Conjoin sensations, right? So that's a good, what are some strategies for implementing this in environments that are not calming or around others? That's exactly the practice, right? So one of the best ways to practice like relaxation is doing it in a loud, busy place, right? But what I really suggest is don't try to teach this in the frying pan, trying to empower them to be able to pick when they introduce chaos, right? When they're trying to practice something in the middle of someplace else, right? So have them do some of these practices when they're controlling their own environment, right? And then slowly titrate, because here's one of those existential truths about the mind-body relationship, is that the nourishing part of the silence within you is not in competition with what's outside of you. But that realization takes practice. I'm telling you, with mind-body awareness, it's not like taking an aspirin. It's something that requires practice. Practice, practice, practice. And so it takes time. Are your previous webinars available to watch? I think so. I think that they can. And so yes, and then there's other things that are coming on this, some workshops on trauma that are coming. It's hard for me to feel my weight on my thighs and feet. Okay, well, I don't know why. I'm sure there's a lot of reasons, right? I have a severed spinal cord from here, right? So I know what you're talking about a little bit, if I'm understanding it right. And what I want you to get used to is, like, you might not be able to feel it all the way, but start the way you learn. Unfortunately, the mind learns more from loss than from gain. This is another one of those bummers about the human condition, right? So if you can't feel, like if I take my hands on my knees and I push back and it lifts my chest, what I can feel the difference of, even if, and I see, I can't feel this, right, like that, right? but then if I release, I notice the change. So one of the ways to start like developing inner awareness is try something and then take it away, and try something and take it away. Because what you're trying to do is recalibrate what your brain is connecting into, right? So even with me, right, I can't feel, and when I push down, right, I do, if I try to think about it like I feel pushing here, it's totally not the same. But when I push down here and then I don't, I do notice a difference. And what happens is people think that the only kind of sensation that's possible in the mind-body relationship is the one that has a fully functioning brain or spinal cord, and it's not true. So my answer to that question is keep trying different things, and train your mind to hear subtle differences. I think that looks like the questions, and we're at 27 minutes. So we try to make this short enough. Next week, there'll be another, I think we'll be working on expansion, right? So all these sensations, living to the outer edges of your body as your birthright, it's part of what we all should do. All right, until next time, we'll see you next Tuesday. Take care.